Hey, Sopranos fans! Welcome to another episode here on Sopranos Street, and we are here today to take a look at Meadow Soprano. Throughout the series, Meadow is often viewed as being sporadic and spoiled, on top of which, despite her often condescending, self-righteous attitude, she seems headed down the path to becoming a mob lawyer and/or mob wife by the end of the series. Now, while her mischievous, almost devious side can be seen early and consistently throughout the series, the guardian angel aspect of her character is initially shown more subtly when she prevents Tony from being killed by Fabian, ironically as a result of her mischievous side. It then proceeds to be laid on increasingly thicker, like when Tony comes out of his coma, until the end of the series where they are doing everything short of just coming out and saying it.
Number 3 is cool, the guardian angel.
At this point, the only thing they could do to be more blunt would be to have somebody like Morgan Freeman doing a voiceover. But as Dr. Melfi expressed, growing up is a constant moving away from and back towards home. And if you view Meadow in that light, a different picture begins to emerge. While there is no getting around how spoiled she is, if you examine the events behind Meadow's moving away from and back towards home, specifically in regards to unrelated males, she begins to appear much less sporadic, her switch in career paths begins to make sense, and the supposedly bullshit reasoning she gave for it is actually given a level of credibility by the audience in a bit of fourth wall irony. The first person we get to take a look at in that capacity is Meadow's high school friend Erik Scatino. Eric's father, Davey, goes back years with Tony, owns a sporting goods store due to his wife, and has a serious gambling problem. After getting into debt with Tony and Richie Aprile, Davey takes Eric's car and gives it to Tony as a partial payment. Tony then gives the car to Meadow, possibly in an attempt to rub her face in shit, but Meadow does the right thing and turns it down. Eric, however, doesn't see it that way.
You know what, Meadow? Fuck you, fuck your gangster father, and fuck this.
Unfortunately, Meadow didn't yet know about the poverty of the Mezzogiorno and couldn't respond, so she had to watch Erik walk out of her life forever.
In this instance, Meadow really didn't do anything wrong, but either way it was out of sight, out of mind in regards to Erik. She soon graduated and moved off to college, although not far away geographically, and met the next guy on the list who was very different socially. Shortly after arriving at Columbia, Meadow meets and develops a relationship with Noah, who is from a wealthy family and a mixed black and Jewish background. This relationship may have been complicated a bit by Meadow's roommate Caitlin, but we'll circle back to that. Meadow skips the formal introduction of Noah and Tony, and instead Tony meets him after he and Meadow just finished watching a movie. Not surprisingly, it didn't go well.
What'd you check?
African American.
So we do understand each other here. You're Ditsul.
Excuse me?
Charcoal briquette, a moulignon.
What's your problem?
I think you know what my problem is.
Perhaps she did this to rub Tony's nose in shit, like he did with her in the car, or perhaps she genuinely didn't realize what would happen. Either way, she doubles down in inviting them to visit, and Carmela calls her out on it.
What did your father say?
Like he didn't tell you, please.
Well, believe what you
He
like.
called Noah things that are so disgusting and ugly, I can't even repeat it.
No, you are right. There is no excuse.
He's lucky I didn't punch his fucking lights out.
In reality, Noah was lucky he didn't try.
So what was this going to be then? Some kind of a big drama? But you wanted your father to come here for what? To subject your friend to this again?
After this, Meadow and Noah begin sleeping together. Maybe she was moving forward despite her father, maybe she was just creaming for him. But after Noah gets a bad grade, allegedly due to Caitlin's nagging, Meadow begins to see a petty side, although she herself is getting pretty sick of Caitlin. Quick side note, who thinks Caitlin just nagged Noah, and who thinks they actually hooked up? Regardless, the real rift between Noah and Meadow began after meeting his parents, whether Meadow was willing to admit it or not. This was essentially Meadow's first serious social interaction with substantially and legally wealthy families, and not surprisingly, she felt as out of place as Tony did during the golf game with Doc Cusimano and his friends. Shortly thereafter, Noah dumps Meadow, and Meadow tries to blame it on Tony, but is rightfully called out by Carmela.
You call losing a wonderful man because of Dad a thing?
Now, is that really what happened? Because you certainly kept seeing him plenty long enough after that business with your father.
And Meadow knows she's right. Whether Noah dumped her because she was too negative, because his parents said to, or because he was a college guy that apparently the ladies like, in New York City is irrelevant, because in Meadow's mind, he dumped her because of who her dad is and not what he said. At this point, the last 2 men in her life had cut ties with her due to who her father was, so she does the understandable thing and goes back closer to home, socially speaking, with Jackie Jr. See, Jackie Jr. wouldn't be scared away by the family business like the last two because he also grew up in it, knew about it, and was essentially one of the guys. The downside to him being one of the guys is that he would act as such, and, not surprisingly, the relationship quickly went awry.
Can't believe you did this to me.
What are you doing here?
I loved you.
Who the hell are you? Fuck you, bitch. What'd you say?
Don't ever call me again.
Yeah, you better leave, bitch.
Meadow's right to be upset. That girl is a stank right hood rat.
In all fairness, Meadow did take and crash his car, so it's not like she was a complete angel here, but she could see the writing on the wall. If she married one of the mob guys, she would end up one of the mob wives, like Carmela.
You have made a fool of me for years with these whores.
This wouldn't be an issue for long, however, because Jackie Jr. is killed shortly thereafter, sending Meadow into a bit of a depression as shown by her outburst during Jr.'s singing and generally extra snotty behavior. This continues through the summer, leading to Carmela calling her out on her very lazy behavior.
Look, Mom, this whole thing about working between now and start of class is all about you being pissed because I'm an intern at the Paper Mill Playhouse this summer.
We bought you a car so you could drive back and forth to your internship. You don't feel bad that you didn't live up to your end of the deal?
Like, I haven't been through enough this year. 12 credits, 2 semesters in a row, and I'm not entitled to a summer?
You hardly...
Hello?
Meadow was still acting like a spoiled, lazy child, but her body was mad ripe.
Ironically, Carmela suggests to Tony of all people that Meadow should see a therapist, another adult to toe the line of accountability. Despite the fact that Tony's personal experience suggests that's not what therapists do, and his face says as much, he agrees and Meadow goes to see a therapist. This therapist just further validates Meadow's behavior, however, and by the end of the session she is ready to head off to Europe. Meadow's desire to leave is understandable though, considering how horribly her last returning home went, a la Jackie Jr., but when confronted with the reality of what it means to travel and live abroad in a manner much harsher than she's used to being treated, she ends up returning to school. When she returns to college, she meets Vito's future arch-nemesis, Finn DeTrolio. Finn is not a wannabe like Jackie Jr., he's not bougie like Noah, and his parents don't live nearby, ensuring that they will never owe her father money like Erik's did. Unlike with Noah, Meadow eases Finn into the family through a dinner at first, and then, perhaps subconsciously, by getting him a job in construction through Tony. This introduction to the family friends didn't end up being very gradual, however, as Finn very quickly sees Gene Pontecorvo smash a bottle on little Polly's head and proceed to beat him. Understandably startled, Finn confronts Meadow about it.
You should have seen these guys. They were laughing. It was fucking sick. I mean, is this what you grew up with?
But this time, Meadow's ready. Showtime.
You know, you talk about these guys like it's an anthropology class. But the truth is, they bring certain modes of conflict resolution from all the way back in the old country. From the poverty of the Mezzogiorno, where all higher authority was corrupt.
Whether or not Finn believed Meadow's infallible reasoning soon becomes irrelevant when he sees Vito giving head to a security guard. Now he's personally involved. This leads to him and Meadows getting into a fight that, interestingly enough, ends up with him kind of proposing to her.
Why don't we just get married?
Married?
Let's get engaged.
Another quick side note, who thinks Finn might have just suggested marriage with the idea that Vito would never kill Tony's son-in-law? While that may have been true and he wouldn't have, once Meadow spilled the beans and Finn got to meet the whole family, he knew exactly what the deal was and called Meadow out on it.
I was in the back of a butcher shop with your Uncle Paulie ratting out a guy I don't really even know. I mean, what do you think's going to happen to Vito for being gay? And don't give me any of that poverty of the Mezzogiorno bullshit. We're in fucking Caldwell, New Jersey.
And Meadow knew it was over.
This isn't tenable.
Not surprisingly, shortly after Vito left the picture, so did Finn, never to be heard from again.
Finn DeTrolio, the man who crawled through a river of shit and came out clean on the other side.
Eventually, Meadow reveals that she is with Patrick Parisi, son of Patsy Parisi, and it's here that many fans feel she's gone astray for good. She's abandoned her pursuit of the medical field and even the Poverty Law Center to join Patrick's firm and eventually become a mob lawyer and or mob wife, but I'll take a bit to play devil's advocate here. When it comes to her potential medical career, we see throughout the series, especially with Caitlin, that Meadow may lack the patience required to excel in that particular endeavor. As to her switching directions within the legal field, let's take a look at her reason.
What about little babies? In the face of meningitis?
You know what really turned me? Seeing the way Italians are treated. If I hadn't seen you dragged away all those times by the FBI, then I'd probably be a boring suburban doctor.
While that second part just seems like her rubbing Tony's face in shit, as the Sopranos are known to do, the first part may have some relevance. At this point in Meadow's life, 3 of the 4 men in her life before Patrick left, at least in her mind, because they judged her due to her father, and in a bit of fourth wall irony, many viewers assume the worst of her at the end, largely for the same reason. Many will also assume the worst because she ended up with Patrick Parisi, but upon taking a closer look, this makes sense as well. The one boyfriend Meadow had previously that wasn't bothered by her family business died because of it. Patrick may have provided the right degree of middle ground for Meadow. He was from the life, but not in it. Allegedly. At the end of the day, Meadow was certainly spoiled and self-centered, but a lot of the conclusions you will see about her are based largely on her father, which is a situation she faced regularly in the show. Also, I think she would have made a terrible lawyer. Her debate style is best described as nagging, which against professional lawyers that are paid by the hour wouldn't prove very effective, and almost all of the points she makes throughout the series are flawed, but that's a whole nother episode entirely. Thanks for watching this episode here on Soprano Street. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.